Massive news has come out about the Habs cap space as they are projected to have up to $26 million to spend in the 2024 offseason. And with some amazing UFAs and RFAs coming up, we are going to dive into our top 3 choices that Kent Hughes should pursue next year when the Habs have all the money in the world to throw around. So let's just get into this, Jesse, and quickly before we get into it, a quick reminder to hit subscribe. Most of you guys watching are not subscribed, so we'd really appreciate it if you did, if you enjoy the videos. But let's just get into this. The Habs have insane cap space. A TVA Sports article says with the current cap set at 83.5, the Habs would have $12 million to spend in summer 2024. We think the cap's going to go up by about $4.5 million. That's what most people predict it's going to be about there. So now the Habs have 16.5. You add in Carey Price, and you're at around $26 million with just 5 or 6 positions to be filled. And Jesse, the thing is, a lot of these positions are going to be filled by young guys, right? So the Habs have a ton of money to go after one of these. These are just the top 20 paid players that are going to be UFAs after next season. There's some good names in there like Austin Matthews, William Nylander, Connor Hellebuck, Jake Gensel, things like that. But Jesse, isn't it just an awesome feeling to know that Kent Hughes has bought in so hard so far for the Habs to rebuild, and now when they have a huge pool of prospects coming up, he has the financial flexibility to splurge on almost whoever he wants?
Well, the light's really at the end of the tunnel, and that's it, so there's definitely some really good options kind of coming up here. And, you really have to feel like one of the best of them is William Nylander kind of coming up next season. We know that he's going to be one of those options. Now, I'm not sure if he's the perfect fit. I still think that maybe Hughes might, look to go through the trade route to maybe secure that, that top 6, if not really that top line goal scoring threat. Because I think when we got when we got Reinbacher last year, highlighted the need for somebody like William Nylander, somebody who really brings just that high level scoring to the table, can play center. He is the best in the playoffs out of all the leagues there. So this is really like what this team is missing, is just that really big goal scoring threat. No, I couldn't bring myself to say Austin Matthews because, that's even just too much.
He'll get extended.
I feel right. That's it. You got to feel like the Leafs, though, like they're kind of running out of room. I think it would be probably smart for them to probably invest in some other areas. So there is a likelihood of this happening, as there's been a lot of chatter about. I don't know. What's your thoughts on William Nylander with the Montreal Canadiens?
Well, yesterday's video kind of highlighted the overall thoughts, whether they should or shouldn't go for it. I think if it's a shorter-term deal, why not? He's a great goal scorer, and he can actually take some pressure off of Cole Caufield, because we saw that was one of the biggest Habs downfalls. Teams just focused on Caufield, and he'd go on big goal-scoring droughts on the power play. So I recommend, if you guys want to know much about William Nylander and whether or not the Habs should go after him, go check the video from yesterday. It kind of dives into him. But Jesse, we're more interested a bit in some other guys, and the first guy I want to mention is a bit of a surprise. Jeremy Swayman. Now, he's not an unrestricted free agent like these other guys on this list, but let's just dive into him. Jeremy Swayman, of course, with a .920 save percentage in 37 games last year, .914 in 41 games the year before on a stacked Boston Bruins team, where his teammate Linus Ullmark won the Vezina last year. But Swayman on his own is really holding his own, proving that he has maybe a Vezina caliber season in him for the future. I think he's really a number 1 goalie, and Jesse, even though he's a restricted free agent, that hasn't deterred Kent Hughes before. He loves going after these RFAs, signing them to extensions. And with the Boston Bruins maybe reaching their end, Brad Marchand's getting into his late 30s, Patrice Bergeron's just retired. Their aging curve is getting up there. They don't really have the depth they used to. Maybe they're in for a down season. If the Bruins decide to buy into a full rebuild, do you think they keep Swayman around for that long-term rebuild, or do you think that maybe he might be expendable, especially if a team like Montreal is willing to give up some draft picks or even some prospects to get his RFA rights?
I think there's some pretty big signs that Jeremy Swayman could be out of Boston pretty soon, and I think that the Montreal Canadiens could be the benefactors of that. Just recently, Swayman and the Bruins, they actually went to arbitration. They ended up to an agreement of 1 year at $3.75 million. Now, whenever a team, and a player do go to arbitration, it's definitely not the best sign for their future relationship, right? And everything else. So there's definitely some dispute there a little bit. So definitely a sign that there could be an opening there. And I feel like this could actually be a really nice fit. I would prefer so much a route of having somebody like a Swayman with like a Montembeault rather than just putting out all this money on like a Hellebuyck, like we would have seen from the last list, Connor Hellebuyck from the Jets. I think that really like spending a little bit less and getting really a tandem of goalies, not only is it financially savvy, but it just seems to be the way that that the NHL is trending. And as we saw from, just looking at his some of his stats from Hockey DB, like in the amount of time that he's had, 2 seasons now where he's played about 35 to 40 games, he's put up some really good numbers, really 2.27 GAA. Just this past season, of course, Boston was an amazing team, record-setting team this past year. But, he helped with that. He played enough games as well. He's shown he can be a solid goalie and is probably capable of taking on a greater workload. So I think that this is really an interesting player to keep an eye on for the Habs.
Yeah, and if you want to go after Swayman, you almost have to buy in that he's going to be a 1A because he's probably – we're going to see how this season goes for him. But, if the price is right, I think that making a trade for Jeremy Swayman to secure that goaltending spot for the future of the Habs, because Montembeault's a UFA after this year too, but I'd like to think the Habs would like to bring him back, even if it's just in a really good backup capacity for someone else if they bring him in, or just to keep that stopgap going until they get a prospect to come up. But Swayman's a very interesting idea. I'd like to think the Bruins would probably want to hold on to him, but you never really know. And Jesse, let's get into our final player that we want to talk about, and that's Jonathan Marchessault. Now, Jonathan Marchessault, of course, coming off a Conn Smythe season, the epitome of consistency, right? Ever since he came over to Vegas from the Florida Panthers in the expansion draft, I mean, even when he was in Florida, 30-goal scorer, that's still tied for his career high. He has been 25 to 30 goals every single season, minus the COVID-shortened season, which he was on pace for about 25 goals anyway. And he comes into the playoffs, has 25 points, 22 games for a Conn Smythe Trophy and a Stanley Cup run. Now, the thing with Marchessault compared to these other guys, Jesse, is he is going to be a little bit older. He's going to be about 33 years old by the time he hits unrestricted free agency, but you can't win a Stanley Cup without a veteran presence, and especially if you get him at the right price tag where he's like 33 and you sign him for like a shorter term deal on a decent cap hit. I feel like he's just a very, very solid player that has the potential to play top 6 minutes for Montreal right as they're entering their contention window.
And another guy that's won the cup recently, probably a tough player to get away from VGK, but definitely you got to think that he has a lot of value all the same, just doesn't really show any signs of slowing down, even though he is getting a little bit longer in the tooth. Like consistently just that 25, 26 goal scorer. There's that French connection. And like you said, right, probably replacing like a Sean Monahan figure, if we could get him maybe like on a shorter term deal, let's say, 2-3 years, I think could be feasible. Preferably like a 2-year deal, I think would be amazing if possible. But obviously like a super clutch player, right? Like, on one of the best lines in hockey last year. You got to love the heart and soul, what he brings. Obviously, a lot of skill. And as the Habs, we're looking to increase that goal scoring, right? So I think that he could potentially, obviously, be a nice fit as well.
Yeah, and the Habs have done very well recently, especially with the Monahan signing and stuff, of bringing in some veteran guys to really play well for them. And, you have other teams looking interested in them. And Monahan signed another 1-year deal this year. He's going to be a UFA next year. Maybe you bring him back again. But, yeah, Marchessault, I think, just fits any team no matter what. He's a small, feisty guy who's able to put up points. And, yeah, again, he's 32, so we don't know when he's going to start hitting a decline. But you got to think, if a team's going after him for his, mid-30 seasons, it might not be a terrible fit for the Quebec native. Now, Jesse, there's just one little thing I wanted to get into at the end. You guys thought we were done, didn't you? But no, we're not. What about 2025? What if Kent Hughes doesn't splurge this year and he waits until 2025? Just because there's a few names here you guys might be interested in. Oh, with the likes of Mitch Marner, Mikko Rantanen, Sidney Crosby, which I guess does not really fit the contention window, but hey, Leon Draisaitl, and you go down, even you got Brock Besser at the bottom. Jesse, this 2025 free agency class is stacked. If the Habs can save some money, and do you think there's ever a shot that they just throw the bag at Leon Draisaitl to try and have one of the best players in the NHL on their roster during their contention window?
It's not a bad idea because you kind of want to do it once and do it right, because you can only lock up so many players to those bigger type of deals. And that's really only what you really need, right? To kind of do it, build your team from there. So it would make sense, maybe try to shore up some things in the short term with some trades and then kind of play the long-term game, right? It seems to fit well into our window, but there's some amazing players. Obviously you mentioned Leon Draisaitl, Mikko Rantanen would be another amazing fit, another personal favorite of mine. So it's definitely interesting. You know, we want to play the long-term game in this. You know, we know that this is about the time when some of our younger players will start developing and really kind of coming into their own as well. So that'll be something to see, is like, okay, is our top six really filled in by that point, or we do want to kind of refine it further with just take it over the top with a pick like this? That would definitely be amazing to see. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, me too. And you know, another thing in this, Jesse, we didn't talk about any defensemen. That's because we think the Habs have such a good defensive pipeline. But you know, maybe not next year, maybe not in 2 years. But there are also some good defensemen coming up next year with the likes of Hanifin and Shillington. But they're both left-handed D. But hey, that's something the Habs will fix when they get to it. And not to mention the fact that, Jesse, if they manage to get rid of Armia, that's another $3 million they have off the books. So it's going to be crazy to watch what Kent Hughes does next summer and even during the season to maximize on all this cap space. But that'll do it for this news edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Help us hit 7,000 subs. We really appreciate all your support. I'm Josh Gosse for my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.